All right, this is the beginning of our 6-week series on Know Why You Believe. Show of hands, how many of you read the first 2 chapters? You did your homework for tonight. Great. Oh, that's wonderful. If you did not get a book, please let us know. We're going to make an order of books specifically for those who did not get one and need one. And if you can give us your name and let us know that you are still interested in doing the reading with us, we will do everything we can to have a book for you as soon as possible. The message that we're going to do tonight is going to cover chapter 1. And it will cover parts of chapter 1. It's not my point, since you read the chapter. I'm not going to stand up here and just repeat to you what is in it. And week by week, that's pretty much going to be the modus operandi, at least for the chapters that I cover. And really, tonight's message is, as much as anything, is going to be an introduction to this entire concept, as well as taking a look at the first chapter. The first chapter is entitled, Is Christianity Rational? I suppose I could just say yes, and you're dismissed. I mean, that's the way we could handle it. But that would not really answer the rationality for Christianity. So we're going to struggle with that a little bit this evening. And in the process, we're going to deal with a couple of other really important facets of this interesting question. I've chosen as our scripture text tonight 1 Peter chapter 3, verses 14 and 15. This really is kind of a very popular text when it comes to addressing matters of defending the faith, 1 Peter 3:15, but I want to include verse 14 as well, just to kind of get us started. Peter says, even if you should suffer for the sake of righteousness, you are blessed. Do not fear their intimidation, and do not be troubled, but sanctify Christ as Lord in your hearts, always being ready to make a defense to everyone who asks you to give an account for the hope that is in you, yet with gentleness and reverence. There are not very many churches who would do the kind of thing that we're going to do over the next 6 weeks. I'm not sure if that makes us cutting edge or crazy. I'm hoping it makes us cutting edge. It makes us different, and I'm not ashamed of that. We have always been a congregation that is committed to making disciples of Jesus Christ, first and foremost. We're not out to build a big church. We hope and pray that in the process of making disciples, we make lots of disciples and consequently build a big church. But our motivation is not to build buildings and just be a big name. We're out to make disciples of the Lord Jesus Christ. This type of study is part of what's commonly known as apologetics. And that's a good word and a bad word. It's a good Greek word, but it's a bad English word. The word apologetomai is the Greek word. It's where we get our word apology in the English language. What do we do when we make an apology? A lot of times what we do is we try to defend what we've done. I'm sorry, but if you hadn't done blah, 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 I wouldn't have, and that's kind of what we do. That's sort of what's wrong with offering an apology rather than repenting. But in the Greek, it means to make a defense. It is a military term. It was a strategic term. And it was used by Peter in his first letter in our text to say that as Christians, we need to be ready to constantly be prepared and in a state of mind to defend the hope that we have in Jesus Christ. If people come to us who are skeptical, we need to rise to the occasion and put up a defense for the truth of the gospel of Jesus Christ. When I became a Christian many years ago, I kept my brains. I did not forfeit my intellect upon becoming a child of Jesus Christ. I did not forfeit my brains when I said that my faith and hope lie in Jesus Christ, the Son of God, who was resurrected from the dead. Believe it or not, I like to maintain a certain level of intellectual respectability. I really do not like it when people say, oh yeah, you're a Christian, you're one of those. And they kind of roll their eyes and shrug their shoulders and laugh, as though being a Christian anti-intellectual. I am a Christian because I have intellectually looked at the facts. I am a Christian because I believe that a careful examination of the truth leads me to conclude that Christianity is the most rational position to take. And we want to instill that in each and every one of you. That idea that being a Christian means that you are intellectually respectable. You don't have to hang your head and apologize because you believe in the miraculous, because you believe in life after death, because you believe there is a God. And part of what we're going to do as we go through these chapters each week, as we engage in these messages and in small groups, we're hopefully going to give you the ammunition and just the understanding so that you can stand up to those who have skeptical comebacks and those who have their naysaying doubts and who roll their eyes and try to make fun of Christianity. You can stand up and show them that intellectually it's a good decision to follow Jesus Christ. Knowing why you believe will change your life. I promised you, money-back guarantee on our book, that if you will read it, if you'll listen to the messages, if you will make it a point to attend the small groups that are associated with studying this book and the information in it, it will make a difference in your faith. Particularly if you've never had the opportunity to go through this kind of material before. I really think if you get a taste of this, it'll grab hold of you. And once it grabs hold of you, you won't ever want to get away from it. Admittedly, this course of study is not easy. How many of you found the first chapter to be easy reading? A couple of people. That's nice. How many of you found it to be not so easy reading? There you go. I won't ask you to show your hands, but how many of you got about 3 pages into this and you thought, oh my goodness, what's Ken thinking? I hope that's not what's going on in your mind. But this really is not an easy course of study. We are requiring of you, we're asking you to delve deep into your capacity for assimilating this information. We're not taking the easy road here. But you know what? When was anything worth accomplishing ever accomplished easily? That's part of it. The best things in life require effort and sacrifice on our part. And what I'm asking you to do is I'm asking you for a half hour, 45 minutes a week to read, some time to study and listen and assimilate, and I guarantee you it'll make a difference in your life. Tonight we're going to address 3 different subjects. First subject I want to address is what is faith. Todd got started. I figured maybe he was just going to plow right through everything I had to say in the first point, and I'd be 1/3 of the way through before I ever started, but that's all right. What is faith? If you read the first chapter, you got on page 1, and they gave you an interesting, unfortunate definition of faith. Faith is believing in something you know isn't true. Faith is believing in something that you know isn't true. How many of us have friends, work associates, people that we know? That's their attitude toward faith. Is that Christianity is full of people who believe unbelievable things, and it couldn't possibly be true, but there is some dignity in exercising that kind of faith. I went to Merriam-Webster's dictionary online. Let me go ahead and put up on the screen what I found. 2 or 3 different definitions here. First definition, belief and trust in and loyalty to God. That's pretty good. I particularly like the word trust here. I think trust is a good synonym for faith. It's not a churchy word. Faith tends to be a churchy word. Really what it means is just to have trust in someone or something. The second definition, belief in the traditional doctrines of a religion. And then the third definition, firm belief in something for which there is no proof. I'm sorry. Are we allowed to object to the dictionary? But this is typical of the attitude toward faith. Believing in something, firm belief in something for which there is no proof. Well, what about that? We're gonna struggle with that idea tonight and through the course of the next 6 weeks. One of the beginning challenges that the Christian faith faces is debunking some of the stereotypes that are attached to Christian faith and thinking. We start with 2 strikes against us because some of the attitudes are so negative and paint such an anti-intellectual picture of what good Christianity is that we almost have to help people unthink some of their bad ideas before they can ever assimilate the proper ideas about what Christian faith is. Let me suggest this about faith. Faith is everywhere. It's everywhere. It's not just a religious term, though many use it as such. Faith is just another word for trust. I trust my car. I get in it, I turn the key, and I trust, I have faith that it's going to start up and not blow up. Right? Now you might say, well, yeah, but your car doesn't always start. Well, that's true, but nevertheless, that's me exercising faith in my car. You sat down in the chair in which you find yourself. Did you run a host of experiments on it before you sat down? Did you examine it structurally to make sure that it would support you? No, you walked in, you sat down. Really what you did was you exercised faith in the chair. You trusted that the chair would support you. We do the same thing in virtually every area of our lives. You flip a light switch and you expect the light to come on. You do so even though you might not understand how to wire a house. How many of you understand all the ins and outs of electricity? How many of you understand scientifically what happens with the flow of electrons? Now, if anybody raises their hand now, you're lying, because nobody really understands it. We know what it does, but we don't understand why. Yet we don't sit in the dark, do we? No, we use the lights. We use our cars. We use things constantly that we don't necessarily understand how they work, but we trust that they do and we make use of them. Faith in the area of religious faith is no more uncommon or outrageous than faith in other areas of our life. Please don't tell me that exercising faith in an unseen God is just so totally outrageous that it doesn't resemble anything else in life. It resembles virtually everything else in life. And I'm not asking, when I challenge someone to examine Christian faith, I'm not asking you to do anything obsessively abnormal. I'm just saying, give God and Christian faith the same break that you give so many other things in life. Faith is everywhere. Out of sight, but not out of reason. I had a conversation this past week where I had to correct a friend of mine who said that faith is unreasonable. Please don't say faith is unreasonable around me. That would be not a good thing to do, especially as we go through this course of study. I will not allow you to just incidentally say that faith is unreasonable. I will tell you faith is not seen. That's what makes it faith, my dear wife. Quoted Hebrews chapter 11, verse 1. Now faith is the assurance of things hoped for, the conviction of things not seen. That's what makes it faith. It's not seen. But just because it's not seen does not make it irrational. One of my very favorite illustrations of this comes from Dwight L. Moody, who was a preacher of over 100 years ago in inner city Chicago. Someone was questioning Moody's faith, believing in that which he could not see and that which he could not understand. They said to him, Mr. Moody, you don't believe it, do you? He said, oh, yes, I believe it. Well, then you don't accept anything you can't understand, do you? Yes, I certainly do. There are a lot of things I do not understand, but I believe them. I do not know anything about higher mathematics, but I believe in them. I do not understand astronomy, but I believe in astronomy. Can you tell me why the same kind of food turns into flesh, fish, hair, feathers, or hooves, according as it is eaten by one animal or another? A man told me a long time ago that he would not believe a thing he had never seen, and I asked him if he'd ever seen his own brain. Did you ever notice that the things at which men cavil most are the things on which Christ has set his seal? See, we just accept a lot of things on the basis of faith that aren't religious. And just because something is not seen does not mean that believing in it is irrational. As a Christian, I reject the notion that the only thing that can be trusted is what I can see and understand. My oh my, our world would be pretty small if the only thing we believed in is what we could personally experience and personally understand. We don't hold this standard anywhere else in life. For instance, I believe that Abraham Lincoln was the 16th President of the United States. But you know what? I never met him, and I didn't see him sworn in. I didn't see him sign a veto or sign a bill and turn it into law. I didn't hear him give the Emancipation Proclamation, and I didn't hear him give the Gettysburg Address. But I believe all of those things. Now, I must say, though, that I reject the extreme opposite position. It's on the other end of the spectrum. I reject the position by spiritually minded individuals that says you must simply set reason aside and believe something for the sake of belief. There are well-intended people who try to present Christianity that way. Let me tell you, it infuriates me. When people say, oh, you just gotta believe. No, you don't. That's foolishness. Ignorance and stupidity are not faith. Let's not make the mistake of suggesting that if we wear intellectual blinders, that glorifies Jesus Christ. It does not. Some even go so far as to say that faith is irrational, and that's what's so good about it. We don't have time to go into it, but the philosophers at the end of the 19th century had a heyday with this, and they left us with a legacy where religion now is associated with the irrational. I reject it out of hand. People should not have an attitude that says, don't confuse me with the facts. Christians ought to be the ones embracing the facts and saying the facts help us develop our faith. My final point here is what I'm just going to call a place for everything. As my wife would say, everything in its place. There is a place for facts, there's a place for faith, there's a place for feelings. I take great umbrage with the dictionary definition that defines faith as a firm belief in something for which there is no proof. That might be a standard and common notion, but it certainly does not represent New Testament Christianity well. This has come to pass primarily because of the mixed-up teachings of philosophers that disregard rational thought, logic, and clear thinking. They opt instead for feelings without any basis. And I'm not opposed to feelings. I can be a warm, fuzzy individual. All of God's people say, amen. You know what? A Skyline three-way at midnight can give me a feeling, but it won't have anything to do with intelligent faith. Let's not confuse feelings as arbitrarily rubber stamping everything that we believe. Faith is vital, and the feelings that result are as well, and they can exist, but in and of themselves, they're not the validation on our faith. We cannot ignore the fact that facts precede faith. And here's what I mean by a place for everything and everything in its place. Facts give birth to faith, and a well-founded faith help us develop feelings of peace and security in Jesus Christ. Facts, then faith, then feelings. Don't turn it around. Don't move them around, or you will mess up the order. Facts, faith, and feelings. I want to move down to the second subject we're going to address this evening, and that is doubts. What about doubts? Some people deal with doubters like they deal with heretics. You know, they want to burn them at the stake or stone them or run them out on a rail or tar and feather them or something like that. It's important that we have a healthy attitude toward questions and even doubts. And very few Christians, if they're honest, will say they've never had doubts about their faith. Have you ever had a doubt about your faith? I'll tell you, I have. Man, you ever prayed and wondered, God, are you there? Are you hearing me? I mean, to say I'm struggling with doubts, that ought to be an expression that's universal to all of us. I heard someone say there's three kinds of people. Those who've had doubts, those who will have doubts, and those who are brain dead. You fit into one of those three categories. Doubts are kind of the common experience of people who really are striving to develop a biblical faith. Part of the problem is here that if we downplay the legitimacy of doubt, we run the risk of spoiling a person for their entire life. If we receive doubts with an attitude that says, "What's your problem? Aren't you a Christian? How could you think such a thing? How could you say such a thing?" If that's the attitude that we elicit toward Christians and non-Christians who have doubts, what we will do is we will cause them to take those doubts and to suppress them. Suppressed doubts are questions that never get asked. And because they are questions that are never asked, they are also questions that are never answered. And questions that are never answered destroy what remains of a person's faith. We want to be a church where doubters are welcome. Now, listen to me. We're not here to create doubters. We're here to help doubters find answers. We're here to help people who are struggling with doubts and questions resolve them with the facts. But we ought to be a congregation. We ought to be individuals who embrace people who have tough questions. There are biblical examples of people with doubts. I wish we had time to just go through a whole list. Job, Abraham and Sarah, Moses, Gideon, David, Solomon, Asaph, Habakkuk, Zechariah, John the Baptist, Jesus' own brothers, Martha, Thomas, just to name a few. The one thing that is consistent with all of these, if you look at all of these specific individuals who had doubt, you know one of the one things that kind of is a thread that runs through the whole of each example is that the divine response to all of these doubters is patience. At no time does God say, "Well, okay, that was it, man. You're a doubter. Wipe you off the face of the earth." God didn't deal with people that way. And we shouldn't either. Jesus did not chide Thomas when Thomas did not believe in the resurrection, did he? What did Jesus do? He appeared to him, he offered him proof, and he encouraged him to believe. We need to do essentially the same thing. We need to answer the questions, we need to provide the proof, and we need to encourage people to embrace faith. There are several sources from which doubt comes, and I want to suggest to you 7 different places from which doubt can spring. And all of us ought to find ourselves in at least one of these categories, maybe more. But the nature of the doubt is pretty important, and you'll see as we proceed through this. First of all, some people have doubts because they have what I'm going to call an unfounded faith. An unfounded faith. They're raised in the church, and all their lives they just believe. that's the way I was raised, man. That's what my mom and dad taught me. That's what my Sunday school teacher said. That's what the preacher preached on Sunday morning. An unfounded faith. There's never been a serious attempt at laying a good foundation. And the chance is that such a faith will turn into doubt, and the doubt into disbelief as soon as it's challenged. A faith with shallow roots will eventually yield. And I put a picture here. I hope you can see it. I don't think this was from the recent windstorm, but we all saw it, didn't we? Usually it was a pine tree, a huge, huge pine tree, whose roots were shallow on the surface, and a big gust of wind came along and plop. That whole tree went over because the roots were not deep. Same thing is true with regard to our spiritual roots. If our faith is not deep, if we can't answer why we believe, if we can't stand up to the challenges that Satan throws our way, it doesn't matter how big and impressive we look on the outside. If the roots don't go deep, we're setting ourselves up for a fall. Unfounded faith is a source of doubt. Underdeveloped faith is another area where doubt springs. It's only a small step better than an unfounded faith. This is a person who becomes a Christian understanding the reasons for doing so, but never grows from there. All of us need to ask ourselves, are we growing in our faith? Is it real to us? Am I stronger today than I was 6 months ago? Or is our faith vibrant? Is it growing, or is it dying? Is it just, like someone said, if you're green, you grow, and if you're ripe, you rot. If you arrive to the point where you don't think you need to grow anymore, then there's trouble. Third source for doubts will be what I'll call insufficient information. Some people have doubts because they've never gotten the whole picture. They've gotten a little piece, maybe from someone who knew just enough to be dangerous. And they've never gotten the whole picture. Because they don't have all the facts, they make assumptions, and those assumptions, because they're based on only minimal information, then provide a reason for doubts and reason for skeptical thinking. A fourth area for source of doubt is attacks on the faith. Some of us have doubts as a direct result of attacks that have been leveled against the Christian faith in general, and maybe our faith in particular. Maybe you have a neighbor or a person you attend school with or that you work with, and they just love poking holes in your faith. They love pointing out to you when your prayers don't seem to be answered, or when something in the world goes wrong, and they say, hey, how could a God like that? How could you have faith in a God that would let something like that happen? Etc., etc. We see it in the news media. We see it in the entertainment industry. We see it at every level of education, in the workplace, in the neighborhood, in the school, maybe even in your own home. Christian faith is constantly under attack. Now, more than ever, it's important for Christian people to be able to defend their faith and know why they believe. A fifth area for a source of doubt is what I'll call struggles in life. This is the one that really hits us hard because there's no easy way to prepare for it. Sometimes our doubts about God are not the result of God things. Sometimes they're the results of tragedies or difficulties or heartaches, failures, struggles in our own lives, things that go wrong. And we say to ourselves, God, don't you care about me? Where are you, God? And that has reason, that gives us reason at times to doubt God or our faith in Him. A sixth area for doubt is what I'm just going to call life and thought. Some doubts just happen. It's not that something went wrong. It's not that something occurred. It's just doubts happen. And I think here it's valid to say doubts may just be a sign that we're alive and well, that we're thinking, that we're using our brains. We shouldn't see doubt as an automatic sign that our faith is weak. Maybe our faith is growing, and because it's growing, we're thinking. And in the process of thinking, every now and then we run into an obstacle, a pothole that we have to deal with. Seventh source for doubt is the most serious and the most difficult to deal with. This is a sin-hardened heart. A sin-hardened heart. Some doubts are nothing more than evidence that hearts have been hardened by sin. This is usually the case with people who I encounter who want to tell me that they are agnostic or atheists. In 25 years of ministry, I have met maybe a dozen or so people who I would consider honest, searching atheists/agnostics. Usually they are what I would call moral atheists. They don't want to believe in God because God would cramp their style. God would put prohibitions on their life. And so they disbelieve God, and then they bring out the red herrings. Did Adam have a belly button? Now, you can laugh. You can laugh. I've heard it. I've heard it. Did Adam have a belly? Where did Cain get his wife? What about dinosaurs? And on and on and on. And I've had conversations, sometimes 2- and 3-hour conversations with individuals, and if you answer the Adam's belly button question, it's on to Cain's wife. You answer that, it's on to Noah's Ark, and you just keep going from red herring to red herring to red herring. And it doesn't matter how many hours or how many questions you answer, they are not interested in answering their questions. They're interested in justifying their own immoral behavior. I'm not saying don't try. I'm just saying that is a totally different instance than honest doubt. That is a source for doubt. And a sin-hardened heart is something that is deep inside. And intellectually, you're not going to deal with that by just providing answers. It's got to go beyond just the intellect. My last point here with regard to doubt is this. We have to see doubts as creating great potential. And I know that sounds really strange, but doubts say to me potential. Because when a person doubts, they're asking questions. When they're asking questions, that means we're given an opportunity to provide answers. And when we provide answers, that gives us an opportunity to challenge them to faith in Jesus Christ. We have to welcome doubts so that we can build faith in others. And so we want to be known as a church, and we want to be known as individuals who welcome questions and doubts. Let's go to my third subject for the evening, and that is why apologetics. Why apologetics? Why this? Why now? Why me? Why us? Why? Here's the long and the short of it. This series is about making disciples. And the church exists to make disciples for Jesus Christ. Defending our faith, providing answers to those who ask, these are a part of what it means to be a disciple of Jesus Christ. A disciple, folks, is a learner. It's someone who's following and growing in their understanding and becoming more like the Master. A disciple is not just someone who puts themselves in a church building on the weekend. That's not a disciple. And the Church of Jesus Christ is not about just getting people into a building on the weekend. We are about discipling people for Jesus Christ. See, when I face the Lord God in eternity, I would rather face the Lord having produced 50 disciples as my life's work than having grown a church of 50,000 where no one is discipled. We are about the business of making disciples. It isn't fast and easy. There is no shortcut. There are no microwave directions and instructions for taking someone from point zero to full discipleship in an easy weekend. We can't bottle it. I can't do it for you. You have to be engaged in the process. I can help you along the way. I'll do everything that I can to see that I'm an aid in the process, but you have to want to be a disciple of Jesus Christ. We're doing this for the non-Christian. See, this isn't just about us. This is about our friends, our neighbors, our family members, the people we go to school with, the people we work with who don't know Jesus Christ. This is for the guy in the cubicle next to ours who always uses the Lord's name in vain. And he's not a believer, he's a skeptic. We're doing this for him so that you can be equipped to speak intelligently to him about your faith and his need for faith. This is for your neighbor. The neighbor whose dog pees in your yard and it drives you crazy. The neighbor who doesn't want anything to do with Jesus because he knew a Christian once and that Christian treated him in a wrong fashion. This is for your family member who says they know the Lord, but they don't know very much. Apologetics is the means by which we give an answer for the hope that's within us, just like 1 Peter 3:15 says. It's not only for the non-Christian, it's for the Christian. It's for those of us who struggle with doubts, and that's all of us. Points along the way. When I became a Christian, I didn't give up my brains. In fact, I came to the source of truth concerning life and eternity. Apologetics helps bolster my faith in the face of struggles and doubts. It helps me defend myself from the onslaught of a culture that shuns not just Christian truth, but all truth. It helps me hold my head high when the world would make me ashamed of my Lord. It's for us. It's for us to be equipped, to be discipled so that we can disciple others. And it's the Lord's great commission. It's what the church is all about. Let's bow our heads.